I hope you have a good experience at church this morning. I hope the music was good for you. I hope that you enjoyed the video. I hope that you found a parking space. I hope that you were greeted when you came in. And I hope your team wins today. I hope you're feeling good. I hope. And you hope. We hope. We hope for all kinds of things. Our language on a daily basis is filled with the word hope. I hope, I hope, I hope, I hope. Hope is important. We have a choice to make. Are we gonna choose hope, or we're not gonna choose hope? We have a choice on how we're gonna define hope. You can define hope the way that the world defines hope. You can define hope the way God defines hope. There's all different ways that you can define hope. But one of the things that I know for sure is that you say the word hope a lot. We hope for all kinds of things. The reason that we need to make sure that we define hope is because you're going to find yourself in hopeless situations. Some of you are in a hopeless situation this morning. In fact, that may be the reason you came to church, is because you find yourself in a hopeless situation. And sometimes the hopeless situations that we find ourselves in is because we've made choices to be there. We've made poor decisions in a row, and we've made mistakes, and we find ourselves in a spot where we're hopeless, simply out of our rebellion and our sin and our shame. Sometimes we find ourselves in a hopeless situation because just because of life and things have happened and it's not even got anything to do with our control, but we find ourselves in a hopeless situation. And when I am in a hopeless situation, what do I need to do? Hope is a word that is often said, but it is rarely understood. Hope is often said, but it's rarely understood. Having a Christian view, a godly view of hope is incredibly important. So what I want to do this morning is we talk about this word hope. I'm going to try to give some parameters on the word hope, and then we're going to look into the life of Daniel, a prophet that we find in the Old Testament, and see if there's some things that he can show us about the proper hope that we should have. If you're taking notes this morning, the first thing that I really want to say about hope is this: hope is not wishful thinking. So wishful thinking is the primary way that you use the word hope. That's what I started off with. All of those things that I started off with. Hope your team wins. Hope you got a parking space. Hope everything's good. Hope you had a good breakfast. That's all wishful thinking. And almost 100% of the time when you use the word hope, when you hear somebody say the word hope, that's what they're saying. They're saying, I wish this. I hope this happens, but what I'm saying is I wish this was happened. But if we're going to have a godly hope, if we're going to have a hope that has some meaning to it, some meat to it, I've got to understand that hope is not wishful thinking. I've often heard it said that hope is not a strategy. And if you're hoping for something, that's not a strategy. I'm hoping that my kids turn out okay. I'm hoping that I make an A. I hope that I get a job. Hope is not a strategy. When hope is defined as wishful thinking, hope is a terrible strategy. Now, when hope is defined in the way that God defines it, hope is an amazing strategy. But hope is not wishful thinking. Second thing, hope is essential to our souls. One of the reasons that we say hope so much, and one of the reasons we look for hope so often, and one of the reasons we're so desperate for hope is because our soul needs it. Our soul needs everything that is associated with hope. And a lot of times when we say hope, what are we talking about? Well, we're hoping for good things to happen. Nobody ever says, I hope I get fired. I hope my car breaks down. I hope I get sick next week. And you know what next Thursday, I'd like to run 101. I hope I have fever next Thursday. I hope I get a stomach virus on Wednesday. This is not what we say, right? When we say hope, what we're talking about is we want good stuff. And I think sometimes this is what we forget. You were created for good stuff. And I was created for good stuff. God created us to enjoy life. God created us to be secure. God created us to be comfortable. When he created Adam and Eve, he didn't put them in a miserable place. He put them in an amazing place. Because that is our DNA, so to speak. And so our hope is essential because it's essential for our souls. And then the third thing I would say, just kind of as we get started here, is that hope is eternal. Hope is eternal. The Apostle Paul is writing to the church in Corinth, and he writes this in chapter 13. It's commonly referred to as the love chapter. And if you've ever been to a wedding, you've heard 1 Corinthians 13, because it talks about, Paul's talking about love. And at the end of this chapter, this is what he writes. He says, 3 things will last forever: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. 3 things will always be. It's faith, hope, and love. And sometimes as Christians, we think, well, when I get to heaven, I won't have to have any more faith. No, you will always need faith. You will always need hope. You will always need love. So that's why hope is so important. When you put it next to faith and to love, hope is right in the middle, and it lasts forever. It's eternal. So how we define hope and who I choose to place my hope in and what I choose to place my hope in is incredibly important. Now, Daniel is a prophet, lived in the time of, he lived a long time ago. A really long time ago, thousands of years ago. And we have a book in the Old Testament that he wrote about his life. And one of the things there's lots of things you can say about the book of Daniel. I mean, Daniel, it's some crazy stuff in there. And he's visited by angels and talked about the end of times and prophecies and served under multiple kings and interpreted dreams and just some crazy stuff. But at the very heart of Daniel's story is hope. Because Daniel is in a hopeless situation. And you're going to find yourself in hopeless situations. And regardless if you got there because of your mistakes or you got there because of just what happens, all hopeless situations have something in common. They're all hopeless. And Daniel finds himself exiled into a foreign country and a godless culture. He's given the name that as a Christian, it would be like you being captured by a foreign country and taken to a different land and them changing your name from whatever your name is until Satan's prince. Daniel is in a hopeless, hopeless situation. So what did Daniel hope in? How did he place his hope in the right things? What did he place his hope in? So in order to kind of answer that question, I want us to look at some things that Daniel did not place his hope in. The first one is Daniel did not place his hope in his beauty. And you're going like, Daniel was beautiful? Well, in Daniel chapter 1, verse 4, he says this about himself. It says, the king said, select only strong, healthy, and good-looking young men. And he was one of the men that was chosen. Make sure they're well-versed in every branch of learning and gifted with knowledge and good judgment, and are suited to serve in the royal palace. Train these young men in the language and literature of Babylon. So Daniel is writing his story, and he tells us that he's good-looking. And he's not doing it in a bragging. He's just saying this is the facts. This is who the king said. The king said he's only going to take the good-looking and the smart and the athletic, and I was one of them. So Daniel could have depended on his beauty. He could have placed his hope on beauty. I say a lot of times that's what we do. We place our hope on beauty. We chase this idea of beauty. We value beauty. That's one of the reasons that makes beauty so dangerous, is that we value it. And because what we value, that's what we tend to place our hope in. And everywhere we go, we're constantly told that we're supposed to place our hope in beauty, because if you're beautiful, then these things are going to happen. Have you ever noticed it's really hard to find a famous, ugly person? I mean, it can happen. I mean, Bob Dylan won a really important award this week. I mean, he's kind of ugly. I mean, so it does happen, but it's kind of hard. You know, it's they got the look, you know, especially the musicians that we follow. You know, they're talented and they can sing and they got the look. They have that certain look to it, whatever that look is and whatever that genre. Beauty is something that we value, and it's really easy to place our hope in things that we value. Do you know that 92% of all CEOs in the United States are 6'1" or higher or taller? 92%. Me at 5'6", and if I walk in with somebody, and we're even in every way, same education, same everything. Ken, come on up, Ken. Ken and I walk in. We same. Everything's the same. Well, it's not, but if everything was the same, except for how we look and our height, he gets the job, he gets the promotion 92% of the time. Thanks. Simply because he's taller than me. Not because he's better than me. See, that's how much we value it. We value beauty. Daniel had beauty, but yet he didn't value that. The second thing that Daniel didn't value was talent. In Daniel chapter 2, verse 24, what had happened was the king, Nebuchadnezzar, had a dream. And he wanted the dream interpreted. So he called in all his wise men and called all his counselors in and said, interpret this dream. And none of them can do it. And so the king said, like kings do, kill them all. They can't give me what I want, just kill them all. So Daniel hears this. Then Daniel went to see that person, whatever his name is, Arioch, there we go. That sounds good. Whom the king had ordered to execute the wise men of Babylon. Daniel said to him, don't kill these wise men. Take me to the king and I will tell him the meaning of his dream. Daniel knew that he could do that. And Daniel chapter 5, verse 12, a king had this, I told you there was some weird stuff in Daniel. There's this writing appeared on the wall and the king couldn't figure out what it meant. And he called in all these people to tell him what it meant and nobody could. And then one of his leaders said, this man Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar, has exceptional ability and is filled with divine knowledge and understanding. He can interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve difficult problems. If you ever played Trivial Pursuit, you want Daniel on your team. Call for Daniel and he will tell you what the writing means. Daniel was talented. He was very talented. And he could depend on his talent if he chose to. He could have placed his hope in his talent. And the problem is we value talent. And since we value talent, it's really easy for us to place our hope in talent. And if I could just be talented, and if I could just do this, and if I could just really get good at this, and if I could just be gifted in this, then that's what I can put my hope in, and then everything's going to be fine. And we'll even say that about our children. I don't know if you ever say out loud, you hope your children are good looking, but you do. But you say out loud all the time, I hope my child's talented. Because it's something that we value. And Daniel could have put his hope in his talent. Third thing, he could have put his hope in his success. Because he was beautiful and because he was talented, he was successful. You got to work really hard if you're beautiful and talented not to be successful. You got to work really hard. If you're beautiful and you're talented, you're probably going to be successful. And that was the case for Daniel. Look in Daniel chapter 2. I think we're going to start with verse 48. Then the king appointed Daniel to a high position and gave him many valuable gifts. He made Daniel ruler over the whole province of Babylon, as well as the chief over all his wise men. At Daniel's request, the king appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to be in charge of all the affairs of the province of Babylon while Daniel remained in the king's court. Daniel gets all of these riches. He gets all of these things. He even gets the ability to appoint his friends to high positions. You know, that's not what you know, it's who you know. And if you're beautiful and talented and 6'1", then you're in. Right? And so he's successful. Look in chapter 5, verse 29. Then Belshazzar commanded Daniel. Daniel was dressed in purple robes, plural. And purple is the color of royalty. A gold chain was hung around his neck. Daniel had some bling. and he was proclaimed the third highest ruler in the kingdom. And then in Daniel 6:28, and this was a different kings, by the way. This is what makes Daniel such a stud. The third king, so Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus, the Persian. When Daniel found himself in a hopeless situation, it was very easy for Daniel to depend on his success. It had been very easy for him to do. Look, I'm beautiful, I'm talented, and I'm successful. But that is not what Daniel did. Daniel went against the system. Our system is so prevalent that what we're supposed to place our hope in is the beautiful, the talented, and the successful. I can't make stuff like this up. We have an 8 o'clock service at our eastern location, and this morning, a little bit before 6 o'clock, I'm walking around the parking lot picking up trash like I do every Sunday morning. You can find some interesting things in the parking lot at 6 o'clock on Sunday morning. This morning, this was blowing literally in the wind. And so I reached down to put it in the trash bag that I had, and as I was putting it in the trash bag, I noticed it's just a promotional card. It's got 6 advertisements on it. 2 are advertisements on how you can put your advertisement on this, so obviously this is not working. But the one that caught my mind was this: Millionaires and Models Introductions, where the classy, attractive, and affluent find love. How about that? Turned it over as text a psychic. If she reveals the unknown, advice on any problem. Love problems are her specialty. And if you'll text her your name and number, she'll get back with you. Now, if she's a good psychic, she should text me. But millionaires and models, where the classy, the attractive, and the affluent find love. See, we value these things. We value beauty and talent and success. And that's why it's so easy to put our hope in those things. Now, is there anything wrong with being beautiful, talented, and successful? No. Daniel was beautiful, talented, and successful because God made him beautiful, talented, and successful. So nothing wrong with those things. What happens is when we make that and put our hope in those things, that's what the problem is. Daniel didn't do that. What did Daniel do? Daniel's hope was in the only one relational, holy creator God. You ever heard that one before? Daniel's hope was in the only one relational, holy creator God. That's where his hope was. And Daniel 6:10 is such a key verse. And when we read it, it doesn't seem like a key verse. It doesn't seem like a verse we should put on our refrigerators, but this is a refrigerator verse. Put it on your refrigerator. If you don't put stuff on your refrigerator, highlight it. Do whatever. You should know this verse. So Daniel is good looking, and he's successful, and he's talented. And so jealousy abounds. And so the guys don't want Daniel to be in that position, so they trick the king into signing a law that if you pray to God other than that particular king, then you'd be thrown in the lion's den. And verse 10, Daniel chapter 6 picks up the story here. But when Daniel learned that the law had been signed, he went home, knelt as usual in his upstairs room, with his windows open towards Jerusalem. He prayed 3 times a day, just as he'd always done, giving thanks to his God. Now, I've used this verse before, but I want you to get this. This is so important. Notice, as usual. Notice, as he had always done. As usual. As he had always done. Daniel's hope was in God. Daniel's hope was not in his beauty. Daniel's hope was not in his success. Daniel's hope was not his talent. When this happened, Daniel didn't go run into the king and say, listen, you're my friend, and you've appointed me this, and I've done all of these things, and so you need to get me out of this. No, he didn't go in with his gold chain and say, look at all my stuff. I'll give you this stuff back. He didn't try to buy his way out of the lion's den. He didn't go with any of those things. When he heard what was going to happen and he knew the punishment, what did he do? He went to God as usual. Daniel wasn't running to God with an emergency prayer. Now, emergency prayers are okay. And in January, we're going to do a series and we're going to talk about, does God listen? And sometimes emergency prayers are very important. But those should be the exception, not the rule. The rule should be, as Daniel is showing for us here, that as usual, as he had always done, he took his issue, he took his problems, he took his circumstances to God. He took his hope to God, not to his talent, not to his beauty, not to his success. And the other thing to notice in this is giving thanks. He prayed 3 times a day, just as he'd always done, giving thanks to God. He didn't go to God begging for the situation to change. He didn't go to begging God for the circumstances to change. He didn't do that. He went to God giving thanks. And this is an important principle. It's not going to be up on the screen, so you might want to write it down. Failure to give thanks will destroy your hope. Failure to give thanks will destroy your hope. When you find yourself in a hopeless situation, be thankful. Let me tell you why being thankful is so important. Because when you practice being thankful, you will realize how much you have to be thankful for. And you will realize you're not in as much as a hopeless situation as you think. I challenge you this week to take a piece of paper. Take a really big piece of paper. Take a poster board and write small and see if you can fill it up with the things that you're thankful for. You can fill up one side of it just being thankful for the fact that you have the ability to write. All the things that are associated with your ability to write. You have a pen or pencil, you have fingers that work, you have a brain that works. Somebody sent you to school. Somebody taught you how to write. And it could go on and on and on and on. When I choose not to be thankful, it will destroy my hope. What did Daniel do? As usual, as he'd always done. See, when Daniel found himself in a hopeless situation, the lion's den, I'm going to the lion's den. This is a hopeless situation. He talked to God like he'd always done. And the reason I think that Daniel could be so confident in that situation because he was in a win-win situation. Hey, God, I know what you did for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They won't stop talking about it. And they're going to put me in that lion's den, and I know you created those lions, and you take care of me. Or I can just go home. See, that's a win-win. And when your hope is in God, then that's what you get to do. But when your hope is in your beauty, so Daniel couldn't go up to the lions and say, listen, I'm a good-looking guy. You got to stay away. The gold chain meant nothing to them. They didn't care how talented he was. Now I want you to say this. I want you to say with some gusto. Say it out loud. Hope is putting my trust. Hope is putting my trust. Hope is putting my trust in the promises of God. Hope is putting my trust in the promises of God. That's what our hope has to be. In the promises of God. It cannot be and stuff that we value. It cannot be wishful thinking, because if that's the case, you will find yourself in hopeless situations. So, Marty, how do I do that? How do I put my trust in God? How can I operate on this idea that hope is putting my trust in the promises of God? I want to share with you a tool that I've used for a long time. And when I get out of whack, and when I get out of kilter, when I start messing up, I'll go and I'll just draw a triangle. And down at the corner of the triangle, I'll write love things. I think we got those. I'll just draw a triangle, and then on the right-hand corner, I'll write love things. On the opposite side there, I'll put trust people. And at the top, I'll put use God. And I do that as a reminder, because when I get out of whack, this is why I'm out of whack. Because I'm not doing this right. I'm loving things, trusting people, and using God. See, if Daniel was doing this, when the law came down, he would have ran in with his gold chain and his purple robes. And he would have said, "Here are my things, king. Don't throw me in." Or he would have went into played the whole trust card with the king. He's going to trust the king to get him out. King, you're the king. You can change the rule. King, you can do this. You can do that. You can ship me somewhere else. You can hide me. King, I'm going to put my trust in you, King Nebuchadnezzar. Or he could have just ran to God and said, "Hey, God, I find myself in a really bad spot, and I know I haven't talked to you in a year and a half, and I know I'm not doing any of the stuff that you say, and I'm rebellious, and I'm ungodly, but I just really need you to get me out of this tight spot." And then I'll draw another triangle. And down at the corner, I'll put use things. And then on the other side of the triangle, I'll put love people. And at the top, I'll put trust God. So how do I have hope? How do you have hope? I need to make sure that I'm using things. And if the things that God's given me is talent and success and beauty, use them for His glory. And then I'm going to love people, regardless of who they are, regardless of what they do. I'm going to love you. I'm going to love you, but I'm not going to trust you, because I'm going to trust God. And if I'll get my triangle right, it's going to be a whole lot easier for me to love God. It's going to be a whole lot easier for me to place my faith in God. It's going to be a whole lot easier for me to trust God. The band's going to make their way back up, and we're going to close out by singing a song. And as we sing, I hope that you'll be challenged by the lyrics. I hope you'll be challenged by the things that you're singing. And it's just not a song that you're singing to get ready for the sermon, because you've already heard the sermon. This is a song that you can hear and sing and feel and ask yourself, what is my hope in? What am I really placing my hope in? Because hope in your beauty or someone else's beauty. Let's make sure we get that one down right, okay? Because I know for some of us, there's no hope in our beauty. But we place our hope in someone else's beauty. Someone else's talent. Someone else's success. God have mercy on you if your hope is in a movie star. God have mercy for your soul if your hope is in a rock star. God have mercy on your soul if your hope is in a star. And can I get an amen? And say, have mercy on your soul if your hope is in a political candidate. Our hope is to be in God. And along the way, if I'll use things and love people and trust Him, my hope is going to be a lot more than wishful thinking. Now, I got to remind you of something before we sing. Daniel placed his hope in Almighty God while he was exiled as a eunuch. Hope doesn't mean God fixes your circumstances. He may. And God delivered Daniel from the lion's den, and Daniel had to get up the next day and go to work in a godless country. My hope is in God. I pray your hope is in God. Would you pray with me? Father God, we value beauty and we value success and we value talent. Father, help us to use those things for your glory, not to worship those things. Father, help us not to worship hope, because we're not supposed to worship hope. We're supposed to worship you. And when we worship you and we trust you, then you give us hope, because our hope is grounded in you. So, Father, as we sing this morning, may we be reminded that our hope is in the promises that you give and in nothing else. In your name we pray. Amen.